Please welcome to the studios, Rebecca Lucero. Did I get that right?
You got that great, yeah.
Yay, me. 2 points, right down 5 points. Right. Commissioner of Human Rights, newly appointed. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'll give you 3 points if it's Lucero if you roll the R.
Oh.
So, yeah, but no, you did perfect there. And I am really honored to be here with you folks this morning, so thanks for having me.
It's kind of like Cardi B with that old...
Yes, there you go. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. Wow. You come to the office very well equipped with an amazing background, having been an attorney. Well, you're still a civil rights attorney. I don't think you ever get rid of that.
Nope, did not.
Also, public policy director for the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, with an emphasis on inclusion. You were talking about and working in inclusion before it was in vogue in America.
Yeah, I think my background coming from New Mexico really means that what I bring to the table is this idea that we really need to be making sure that everyone can participate fully. And so, inclusion is the word that we're using right now. We've used different words in the past, multiculturalism or certainly diversity and equity. So these are all words, but I'm interested more in the actions behind the words, that we're actually doing the work to make that happen. And I love thinking about culture change and how we are intentionally choosing to do better every day. So, yeah.
So talk about the equity framework that you bring to the Department of Human Services that might or might not be different from your predecessor.
Sure. I think that we're building off of the phenomenal work of Commissioner Lindsay and Governor Dayton, and that's just a privileged place to be in, to start with a really strong foundation and a really strong team. And so for me, when I'm talking about equity, I'm really talking about undoing disparities that exist, and where we see the biggest disparities across Minnesota. Hands down, we see racial disparities more than anything. And so that's where we're either number 1 or number 2 in the country when it comes to the worst racial disparities. So that's where we have to put a lot of energy to actually intentionally undo disparities. We have the same problems with disability as well, and our caseload demonstrates that in our department.
So your department has a wide ranging, it's not just with equity, but it's disabilities, it's the right to work, it's everything you try, case law, all of that. So where do you spend most, as you see it right now, I know that you're not uninformed coming into this position. Where do you see will be continuing to be the most time that's going to consume the office of the Department of Human Rights?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We really want to make sure that we're a resource for Minnesotans. And so anyone is able to come in and file a charge of discrimination. And so we really want to make sure people know that we are open to take charges. And so if it's in housing, if it's employment, maybe it's at a restaurant that you were at and you were treated differently because of your race, because of your disability, because of your gender, we would like to hear about that because we need to make sure that doesn't exist in Minnesota. So we'd like to work with someone on that. So that is where we'll continue to spend most of our time. But from that, of course, we take into account where can we do more education, where can we do outreach, and where can we change policy altogether so that we're moving upstream to prevent these situations from ever happening.
It's been pretty vogue here with a lot of the new commissioners and even with Attorney General Ellison to do listening sessions. Yeah. Is that on your agenda?
Yeah, so one of the things that's we work really hard to get across all of Minnesota, and so we're hoping to do some listening sessions this summer in particular in parts of Minnesota that have higher rates of discrimination and where we could really do some on-the-ground partnership to make sure people know that what they can do. A lot of people who think, I called the police because I was discriminated against, and the police said there's nothing we can do. There is something you can do. So we need to make sure we're talking to folks where we see these rates going up.
You have a personal story with regard to civil rights that you bring a unique perspective. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I hear it best from Mayor Melvin Carter when he talks about how our identity defines our leadership, and he speaks about that very strongly. So my identity as a queer woman of color from New Mexico, proud Chicana for those who are out there, means that my history and background informs my work every single day. So I was raised in the grocery stores. I was watching people being treated poorly, oftentimes because of race, or at least that's how I perceived it. Speaking Spanish, I was raised with stories about my grandma being locked in closets and beaten for speaking Spanish. These are just really common issues that many of us are faced with and the kind of the wounds that we carry with us, but it also gives us the ability to be really deeply committed to making change and to work in a really interconnected way to support each other, because we got a lot of work to do.
So were you intentional when you went to school from Albuquerque that you said, okay, because, and as you said, informed work, your informed life, actually.
Yeah.
So is that, was that your original course of study to follow this work of inclusion?
Yeah, I would work with my dad in the grocery stores before and after school, and I would get so upset about things, and he would tell me, if you want to make a change, go be a lawyer. And we had no idea at that point that there's a distinction between law and justice. And there is a distinction, and I'm always hoping and working to bring those things together.
I was just curious. You talked about how some people maybe experience a situation of discrimination or whatever it may be, and they're not really, and the police might say, I can't help you. How do we find and how do we know when the time has come to call the Minnesota Department of Human Rights? How do we know our situation is for your department?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, so the police have more jurisdiction over criminal elements, and so we have jurisdiction over the civil code. And so anytime you feel like there's been some sort of injustice done, and you think that it may be because of race, maybe because of disability, maybe because of religion, you should reach out to us. We have intake staff who can take phone calls, or people can meet with us in person, whatever they feel more comfortable with. And we have an office in St. Cloud too, so people can meet us. We can meet people where they are, and we'll get that charge filed, and we'll start a process. It's a lengthy process. I want to be very transparent about that, because oftentimes, justice is not as fast as we would like it to be. And sometimes, the standard is high, but that's sort of why we want people to come forward, because then it offers us opportunities to identify where there's problems for education and policy change. So always is what I would say.
Always, gotcha.
Yeah.
Everyone, we're talking with Rebecca Lucero, the Commissioner of Human Rights. How about that?
Oh, you did better than me.
5 points.
Oh, well, I still got 3.
Way beyond the range. So, in the warm up, the information packet that we received from Christine in your office and so forth, you talk about a time of great demographic change. What do you mean?
Sure. Yes. What we have. And what I'm flipping through right now is my notes. I am just a few weeks on the job right now, so I want to make sure I get the right information when I'm talking here. Sure. So,
demographic change as it relates to the role of the department and its work.
Yeah, so since 1985, state law requires the Commissioner of the Department of Human Rights, that's me, to issue workforce participation goals for women and people of color. And I know that's something Commissioner Lindsay talked with you folks extensively about, and our commitment to doing that work continues, particularly because of the change in demographics. So right now, 33% of children in Minnesota's public schools identify as students of color, and 43% of Minnesota's students in the 7-county metro area identify as people of color. So we really need to ensure there's equal employment opportunities. That's critical to the sustainability of Minnesota's economy. It's also, of course, the moral and the right thing to do. We're talking about our children and our future. And so these changing demographics require us to think differently and to work differently. And we here in the community got the skills, we've got the knowledge, and so we just got to be part of the conversation.
Governor Walz says, I'd love for you to be my Human Rights Commissioner.
Yes.
And eventually you said yes.
Right away.
And so when you're thinking about that, when you're home and you said, okay, when I get this, how would you finish the sentence? When I get sworn in, I'm going to make sure that in the next 4 years I'm going to do what?
Yeah, that's a really common question that I'm getting asked right now. And what I really hope that I'm doing first and foremost is tying together the work, creating a real ecosystem, so where people have come and expressed concern about a potential discrimination, that we are going upstream. So when we're doing that discrimination work, it's one person at a time, one case at a time. So what I really hope is to be doing systems change work, to be taking on the bigger picture, to be taking that information on and preventing that from ever happening. My public policy director talks about the best kind of discrimination is the kind that never happens. So I would like to spend a lot of time working to preventing those moments from ever happening, to complement the great work that we do, so that when they do happen, we're pursuing next steps on that as well.
The most important question that I could ask you based on our conversation this morning is this. What would your mom or your dad say right now about you?
My parents are really proud of how hard I've worked, and I think they would say that they're really proud of me, but I just would pay that right back to them. I would never be where I am without their tremendous hard work and dedication. And I carry with me the weight of a lot of people who come before me, and I'm aware of how lucky I am to be here today.
4 years from now, when the campaign is up and Tim Walz is saying, I'd like to continue this work, what will you be saying?
Let's go. We've got a lot of work to do.
Right. Great.
Do you have a final thought for us this morning?
No, not today, but I appreciate this opportunity to be here. I'd love to come back and talk as we move forward with some cases that come out in the future, and stay updated and make sure I'm listening.
All right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca Lucero. Did I get it right this time?
5 more points.
How about you, Freddie? That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Newly minted Commissioner of Human Rights for the state of Minnesota, formerly the Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, a civil rights attorney. Comments we've heard that Commissioner Lucero is uniquely qualified to head this department for the state of Minnesota.